Hello, I'm Kristen. I am a journalist who's covered the restaurant technology space for the better part of the last decade for a number of publications. And I'm super interested in all of the change and all of the evolution that's been happening in the space, in restaurants, the consumer experience. You're super far away over there. Just how the restaurant industry, which has traditionally not been a very tech-forward industry, has adapted to a changing consumer. So I'm super happy to be here with these three panelists to discuss reinventing the restaurant and the future of the business. So I'm going to start with a little one-on-one with each of them, and then we'll do kind of a panel-style discussion, and then at the end we'll open up for Q&A, so please think of questions. Clayton.
Yes.
I am super excited to interview you so soon after the launch of your company, or you coming out of the dark. And I was super excited to try your pizza last night at happy hour. So can you tell people a little bit about Picnic?
Yeah, thank you. Picnic is a food preparation automation company. We launched out of stealth about a week ago, and it's been a heck of a week. We served pizza to 500 people last night, which was really exciting. And our system makes custom pizzas, 300 per hour at 12-inch. Each pizza is customized to size and toppings. And last night we had one person tossing dough and putting that dough in the system. Next person touched the pizza, was just putting it in the oven. So essentially one person made pizza for 500 people last night. One person.
Can you talk about what that one person does versus what the machine does?
Sure. So our system takes sheeted dough as an input, and then we put sauce, cheese, sliced meat, and what we call granular toppings, which is onions, peppers, sausage, any small toppings that you'd normally put on a pizza. And it's all modular, so each one of those is a separate module. You can put them on in any sequence. And the pizza rolls down the line. It takes about a minute for the first pizza to go across the line. And each pizza behind that is about 12 seconds later. So we're at the time when the first pizza is coming off the line, there's 4 more behind it. So we're making 5 pizzas simultaneously at any one moment when we're making in volume.
And how does the restaurant or the person operating the machine determine the speed at which they're coming?
So the pizza, it runs at one speed. So it's really a matter of how fast you put in each dough. Last night we're doing it manually. That's the way we're set up for this show. But we also have a system to feed the dough in automatically. So it's a digital ordering system. The orders go into a mobile app or an iPad located at the system. There's a backlog of orders. Each sheet of dough is read by the ingress module. It sees what's the size and shape of the dough, and that informs the rest of the modules as to where to place the toppings. So it will go at that full speed one every 12 seconds if there's a backlog of orders and there's a dough ready to be processed.
Okay. And then one thing I didn't understand until a minute ago is that you're not a restaurant company. You build a product that you intend to sell to businesses.
That's right. We're a tech company. We're selling to restaurants, food service operators, stadiums, airports, schools, anyone who makes pizza. And it turns out there's a lot of people making pizza. There's 76,000 pizza restaurants in the U.S. alone, and that doesn't count the 65,000 food service locations that also make pizza, which also doesn't count convenience stores and school districts and everybody else. So that's just the U.S. It's a global product, and we've got lots of global interest in the last week since we launched.
That's exciting. There's also other robots making pizza in the market. Yeah.
That's right. So there are other automated pizza systems out there. Ours is the only one that actually makes a pizza from scratch, start to finish, and uses whatever ingredients the chef wants to use. So we use right down to the brand and the specific food that the chef wants, and chef's menu, exactly the proportions and the quantities of the ingredients. Our system will make exactly that branded pizza, and that's one of the advantages that customers like, is they want to make a consistent pizza, but it's hard to do if you don't have trained workers who are measuring the ingredients. You can't do that really fast, so we can make the same pizza every time exactly to the recipe.
Okay, all right, cool. Derek from Sweetgreen.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So one funny thing from our prep call that I wanted to say was that you said that when Sweetgreen called you at first, you kind of blew them off.
Yeah.
You were like, yeah.
Yeah, there's not one close to my house, and I hadn't really ever heard of them, and didn't really eat salad that much at the time, so sent Nick away until I went and actually got to try it out and got me interested again.
When was this?
This was right about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in September, the latest funding that Sweetgreen received valued your company at $1.6 billion.
Yeah, not bad for salad.
Good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. As in we in the press like to call it the first salad unicorn salad. Yeah. Can you just talk about what you're doing there and what you're excited about at Sweetgreen?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an exciting time to be at Sweetgreen and to be in the food world overall. Sweetgreen's in a transition phase right now from restaurant company to food platform, and so there's a lot of investment going on. We're using the funds we've raised in our digital platform and in new store formats and in menu innovation, and so it's just a really great growth time for us, and a lot of really fascinating things going on in the business right now.
So you're not a restaurant, you're a tech company. Is that?
We're a tech company, but we're a food company first.
Okay. All right. Fair. I'm curious, what's working well for Sweetgreen and why? Because I'm based in San Francisco, but when I had an office in New York, my office was in the Nomad neighborhood. Yeah. There's a Sweetgreen, there's a Dig-In, there's a Fresh & Co., like all within 2 minutes from my office door. And so what's working now, and how do you differentiate yourself in the crowded salad market?
Yeah, I think there's two really key things that we're doing well. One is meeting customers where they are, and that's a big part of the different distribution models that we have. You can come into our store, you can order through our app and pick up in the store. We can meet you in your office through Outpost. We can meet you at home through delivery. And we're expanding our delivery capabilities so that we can meet people even more. Along with that, we don't have like a standard for our restaurant per se. Each one of them is a little different, and each one of them has been tailored to fit the community that it's in. Whether that's the local artwork or the exact layout of the store, you really get to experience your Sweetgreen, not Sweetgreen generically. And then at the end of the day, I think a big part of the success is really all about the food. It just tastes good and you feel good after you eat it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Sweetgreen has a number of chef partnerships, and I'm not sure if this is something that can you talk to them? I think they're really interesting because I do think that they are a differentiating factor in the market.
They're definitely something I found fascinating about learning about the brand, and a big reason why I was interested in joining. It's almost like and really I think that Nick Jumet is sort of the mastermind behind these chef collaborations. In fact, he's been able to get people to think of a vegetable hitting the market almost like it's a new sneaker coming out. It's sort of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have a T-shirt with Nancy Silverton on it. The Nancy. Yeah, it's good. It's good salad. Good salad.
She's great.
And then the other thing I want to talk about with you directly is the Outpost model, because I think that's really interesting, and part of that to me is like literally right place, right time, right? Yeah. Like your salads are in the right place at the right time for a captive audience. Can you explain that model?
Yes, the way Outpost works is if your office subscribes to Outpost, we'll put a set of delivery shelves in your office building, and then anyone in your office can download our app and order by the cutoff time, and if they meet the minimum, we deliver no charge. If you don't meet the minimum, the office place that's sponsoring it, they pay the delivery charge.
What's the minimum? Does it vary?
It varies a little bit.
And how many Outpost locations are there?
We have more than 400.
So it grew very quickly.
Yeah.
Cool. And is it mostly major markets, or is it all markets that have a Sweetgreen brick and mortar?
We have Outpost in all of our markets now, but the highest density, of course, is New York City, where we have the highest concentration of stores and the strongest brand presence. It's also the easiest to do there because the delivery distance is not very far to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Do you have rules about how far you'll deliver?
Yeah.
Can you share them?
No.
Okay, fair. All right, Adam, CEO of Brightloom. Oh, is it on?
Yes. Is this working? Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
So you have been CEO of Brightloom for less than a year?
Yeah,
Sure.
just about 5 months
Okay,
now.
great. And when you joined the company, it was called something different. It was called Pietz.
That's right.
And Pietz was, at the time, a kind of like a modern automat, a non-staffed restaurant. I don't know. How would you describe it?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, Pietz was this sort of modern automat that you could only order by placing a mobile order or through the kiosk and then picking it up from these digital cubbies. But that restaurant concept actually shut down about a year before I got to Pietz. Mm-hmm. And Pietz had pivoted about a year ago to being a technology company. And so I came along when the chairman of Pietz was talking to the CEO of Starbucks about potentially a way the two companies could work together. And I was lucky enough to be asked to come in to take on what is kind of a new pivot on the company to being a platform company that is sort of like the AWS or the Shopify for restaurant technology, particularly around ordering, loyalty, payment, and customer engagement.
Okay, so can you talk about your work with Starbucks? You used to work at Starbucks.
I did. Some of my former colleagues are in the room with me here. But yeah, I worked at Starbucks for almost a decade. I was the chief digital officer at Starbucks. And my team and I worked for years on building up essentially like a digital ecosystem or a digital platform for engaging with our customers. And it was primarily around the mobile app, but it involved loyalty, mobile payment, mobile ordering, and personalization, personalized offers and recommendations using data science. And so the idea here is Brightloom has licensed the technology from Starbucks around this digital flywheel, as Starbucks called it. Brightloom, we are now combining that technology with the technology we already had, which is that automat technology, if you will, the in-store hardware automat technology, to create a one-stop shop platform for any restaurant chain to be able to build their own flywheel and do something similar to what Starbucks is doing.
Okay. And I mean, Starbucks is consistently held up as, a model of digital excellence and great success in that world. So what have you taken? What have you brought with you to Brightloom?
From that?
Yeah, from that. Just,
Well, thanks for saying that. We had a great team. And I would say that the first thing that we learned was that there are certain principles that matter when you're building your own digital platform. It's not every restaurant chain or every restaurant concept is going to want to replicate exactly what Starbucks has. So instead, the idea was what were the building blocks that Starbucks used to build a successful digital platform, and how do we take those building blocks and make them available to any restaurant chain so they can build their own ecosystem? Things like data science as a service. It's hard to build a data platform and hire data scientists and data engineers, so we're thinking to ourselves, wow, we wish we had a really sort of plug-and-play or easy-to-use data science platform. The ability to easily integrate between ordering, loyalty, payment, purchase, point of sale system. These were all things that we had to build up ourselves at Starbucks, and so we learned, wow, if we could take these building blocks and make them available to other restaurant chains, they could build something similar quickly. And the key thing that we took from Starbucks is it's all about customer relationships. So when we describe what is Brightloom is really like a one-stop shop customer engagement platform, because all of these things, whether it be ordering or loyalty, mobile payment, mobile engagement, personalization, they're really all about strengthening the relationship you have with your customer. And so that was a big thing that we took from Starbucks and that we're building into the Brightloom platform.
Okay. I think loyalty is a really interesting conversation because when it's done well, I think it works really well. And I'd be happy to open it up to the group too for just thoughts on modern loyalty programs or just what's working in terms of loyalty without being too invasive or too creepy or too all-knowing. Yeah,
at Starbucks and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. At Starbucks, we had the benefit of many years of building up this loyalty program, and we made mistakes, and every time we would learn something, we would try and improve the program. So and we also knew that the program worked well for Starbucks. Starbucks had a certain footprint, frequency, average ticket size. And so like there were certain behaviors that were unique to Starbucks customers that we built into the loyalty program. But overall, over the years, Starbucks has really done a nice job of building a pretty sophisticated loyalty program. It was transaction-based, and it went to spend-based. And they had one-size-fits-all rewards, and now they have multi-tier rewards. And so, in this day and age, Starbucks is, they really have set the pace for great loyalty programs for a restaurant chain.
Any other thoughts on loyalty? No? Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll pivot a little bit. I want to talk about kind of the concept of a restaurant because it's changing. And even the National Restaurant Association early this year, they started talking about restaurants not as physical locations, but as, I don't want to get this wrong, points of access is what they're calling them. And I think that's really important to talk about, and that encompasses things like pickup, it encompasses things like the outpost model, and it encompasses things like digital ordering and delivery. So, do you have thoughts to share on just the changing face of what a restaurant is and how businesses can perhaps adapt to that new normal?
Yeah, I would say we see this with our customers where we're bringing what may be regarded as revolutionary technology to an established industry, but we actually finding that customers are pretty receptive to it. And I think it's really a hard time to own a restaurant because the consumer tastes are changing so quickly to delivery and carry out. Even the pizza restaurants we talk to, they've been delivering pizza, but now you can get anything delivered, so they have pressure to continue to adapt to a market where people are getting other foods delivered, so they have to shift to that. Carry out and is growing much faster than dine in. So people who've invested in big dining rooms are finding those are sitting empty. Kitchens are overworked because the number of meals are up, but the patrons in the dining room are not actually eating those meals. We see that actually degrading the dine-in experience. And this is where we think automation can come in because you can, if you're automating the food preparation process, you can handle that bulge from the delivery orders.
Okay. I should have asked this earlier, but does your machine like plug into the wall? Do you just need one outlet and then it's ready to go, or
plug it in and ready to go? It requires power and internet, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
One plug.
Yeah. Can
you put it in a truck?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about the size of a normal pizza make station. So the system we have downstairs that I believe most people have seen, it's about 6 feet wide and about 3 feet deep. So it rolls in 3 separate modules about 2 feet wide. So you roll it in, set it down, plug it in, turn it on, you're ready to make pizza.
Huh, okay. How much does it cost?
Well, it's interesting. Our model is robotics as a service, or some people are suggesting perhaps pizza as a service. So you can get the system for no upfront cost, and we set a monthly fee based on the volume and the size of the menu. But we believe the savings from labor savings as well as food waste savings, consistency of product, improved results, it should more than pay for the monthly fee.
So like a subscription model.
Exactly.
So you don't own, me, the restaurant owner, I don't own it.
You don't need to own it.
Okay.
And we find a lot of restaurant owners are really, really like that. They don't have a lot of capital to spend. I spoke to one franchisee. He said, I don't own anything in my restaurant except my ovens, and I wish I had known my ovens.
Oh, okay.
And if you look at the changing restaurant landscape, when you're facing changing market demands, you wish you'd have known things because those fixed assets just become boat anchors on your balance sheet if you can't use them.
All right. More thoughts on changing concept of restaurants?
Oh yeah, there's going to be more change in restaurants in the next 5 years than there's been in the last 100, probably, with delivery, with automation, with robotics, with increased digital ordering, and even just the pace of menu innovation that's going on right now. The taste of the younger generations, and even my parents are on Blue Apron and like thinking that they're foodies now, and so even their taste has shifted significantly in the current food culture.
Do your parents eat at Sweetgreen?
They do. There's not a Sweetgreen in Fresno yet, but when they visit or when we're down there, haul a bunch of salads across the valley.
Awesome. Adam, thoughts?
I mean, I'm not just saying this because Derek's here, but I think Sweetgreen is probably the best example in the world of what I think is going to come in restaurants. Meaning, there's, if you're a Sweetgreen customer, you have the app, you have your favorites, you're a member of the loyalty program, you get recommendations, and you have so many different ways that you can order Sweetgreen, and so many different places you can experience it, at work, at home, at their restaurant, and they've done such a nice job of making it pretty seamless that whereas you're a consumer, you don't have to worry about thinking all that through. They worry about the logistics, they worry about all the heavy lifting, and I think that's going to be pretty typical of restaurants. I think there's a reason why they're getting this huge valuation, because they're out ahead of everybody in that regard. And I think it goes, what I think is interesting is it goes to you said that restaurants are more like points of access or whatever, and I think that's really coming from the customer perspective. The customer nowadays is thinking about eating their food on the go, literally and figuratively. They just, the shift from, I think I read that 25% of all food consumed in the U.S. is now consumed from a restaurant away from home, which is amazing. And that's, I think, the fastest growing part of food right now. And so you just have this concept of food mobility and people thinking about, like, not eating in restaurants all the time and just being and having their food wherever they want it, however they want it. And I think that's it's a very customer-centric way to think about things, but it's going to be hard for all restaurants to keep up with it, because there's a lot of technology and supply chain and logistics and customer engagement gymnastics that has to get worked out if you're really going to do that well. It used to be you just opened up a restaurant and had a kitchen and had some servers and had some tables, and it mattered about great food, great service, great location, and now you have to worry about 14 other things, and I think that's kind of the state of the restaurants right now.
I mean, 14 other things sounds like a luxury. I think it's like more like 40, 50 other things, lots of things.
Yeah.
Lots of things happening.
Yeah, you have to be a tech company, kind of like these. I mean, you really do. It's You have to start. That's not necessarily what most restaurant chains are sort of set up to do, both physically and in terms of their talent, in terms of their systems.
So how do you balance that then as a restaurant? That your primary goal is probably to feed people, right? But then you also have to have this understanding. And if you're Sweetgreen and worth over $1 billion, you can hire a very capable tech staff. If you are an independent restaurant, or even maybe a small chain locally, how do you balance investing in technology and infrastructure while still maintaining a good product so that you can retain customers? Anyone? Well,
I mean, I would say I'm very selfish by saying this, but I mean, that's kind of the whole reason Brightloom exists, is that we believe that you don't want to have to go to four or five different places. You're going to want to have more of a one-stop shop. I mean, you're not going to truly buy all of your services and your entire tech stack from a Brightloom. It's just not realistic. But right now, if you want to have ordering, loyalty, mobile payment, third-party delivery integration, let alone interesting pickup or delivery options that you want to run yourselves, that's usually like 3 to 6 different vendors that you have to manage, 3 to 6 different technologies that you have to integrate, and so we think that there's an opportunity to, again, be like an AWS or a Shopify for that space, and so that's why we're excited to take the technology from Starbucks, combine it with what we have, and then provide a platform approach. But I will say that there are a lot of good vendors in the space. Like there are a number of good loyalty companies like Thanks and Punch and Level Up, and there are ordering companies like Olo. And if you're a small restaurant, you can even use like a Chow Now and get an app and do mobile ordering. So there's a lot of great solutions that are out there. So the good news is that irrespective of what Brightloom ends up doing, there's a whole tech industry that's sort of coming up to help meet this need.
Except all of those vendors are charging money, right? So like the more the technology goes forward, the more hard choices that restaurant owners have to make in terms of who's spending, because everybody wants a cut of everything. And every time a new technology comes in, any part of what you just described, you have to pay more. So what do you think that means for the future of the restaurant business? Is it higher menu prices? I mean, it has to get made up somewhere.
Well, I think thankfully for a lot of these smaller restaurants and mom and pop restaurants, they're living in a time where so much of this technology has been democratized already. If you're talking about trying to set up a data center 15 years ago, that was horribly expensive, and you need a lot of specialty expertise to do it. I mean, with companies like Brightloom, and there's some others there, and with the ability for them to host their products in different cloud providers, it's really not that expensive, and will soon be not that difficult to deploy. So even the small proprietors will be able to keep pace.
And how do businesses know who to trust?
Pardon?
How do you think like a smaller business should know which company to trust with their tech decisions, or how does that?
Oh man, they're probably just going to have to fail into it.
Yeah. Which for an industry with really low margins is a little bit is scary and daunting. And I think my conversations with restaurant brands have often been like, we don't understand this. And there's kind of two paths they take, which is ignoring it completely, which worked maybe for a couple years and it's not really serving them well now, or it's just trying a bunch of things and failing and maybe finding what they need.
It's such a period of transition where you have restaurants that never used to do delivery at all, and now they know they need to do delivery, so they're using a third party or they're trying to do it themselves. The third party commissions now those costs have to be baked into the cost of the meal. They've got to reprice their menu. There's just lots of pressure on these guys to make the transition. And yeah, there's a path to transition, but it's treacherous, and a lot of restaurants will fall by the wayside as they try to make that transition. But it's also lots of opportunity for new offerings with new business models to take advantage of the new models that are available.
Okay. You're shaking your head. Do you have anything else?
No, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting because I do think that virtual restaurants are going to spring up and become. And you hear about cloud kitchens, which don't have to be a virtual restaurant. It can be a real restaurant that has a cloud kitchen, like a Sweetgreen. But you also have there's going to be national and regional virtual restaurants, and I think it's going to push a lot of traditional restaurants and restaurant chains to rethink how they use their space in their restaurant, how they should be opening up cloud kitchens themselves. So it's going to be an interesting time, and as Clayton said, there's the consumer's out a little ahead of the restaurant. The consumer's always out a little ahead, right? So the consumer's out ahead, and they're wanting delivery. They don't understand why it can't happen for inexpensive, and they don't understand all the logistics and the cost pressures involved. And so restaurants are gonna want to get on these third-party delivery aggregators, and then they're going to figure out, can they afford it, and what does it mean to have their customer relationship disintermediated, and so there's going to be this like learning curve that we're all going to go through.
Right, and the third-party services are offering like no sign-up fees and like really low, for entry. I mean, it's classic, business model. It works. That's why they keep doing it. I do want to talk about ghost kitchens, cloud kitchens, dark kitchens. We used to call them commissary kitchens. I don't know, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, huge topic. They've been discussed at the summit pretty widely. But I think you can't talk about the future of the restaurant industry without talking about these ghost kitchens. Sweetgreen, you have a deal in New York with it's called Zool Kitchens?
Yeah, we've been working with Zool this year, putting that facility together.
I love that name, by the way, Zool. Yeah, it's the ghost from Ghostbusters, right? The ghost kitchen. So, can you talk about that and what that's been like? Going from these really beautifully designed storefronts that attract, foot traffic in New York City to working with, the opposite of that, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we have a lot of experience with online ordering. In some of our areas, half the business comes through the digital platform, and so we've been producing a large amount of product on purpose-built online ordering lines for several years already. So the transition for us to start that up, pretty smooth.
Any challenges you can share?
Well, the challenge of having, you're not in control of everything anymore. When we open a store, it's our general contractor, our design team, our people on the ground, our trainers, our team members, and you're giving up some of that control in exchange for the support in bringing that together logistically. So there's always some bumps introducing another party, and in fact, they're a new entity, a new organization as well. We're all learning how to do it together.
And these, I mean, they're structured differently too, because Zool is just, it's purely like the location, right? It's like real estate, and there's the kitchen in there, and then, you know, there's companies, some of the delivery companies are operating these locations, and they're fueling them with data, and so there's lots of different business models. Again, everybody wants to take a cut, but you're nodding again. Do you have, want to talk more about ghost kitchens?
No, I don't. I'm still learning about ghost kitchens myself. So, I mean, we had at Starbucks, we had a dark kitchen, ghost kitchen in the Empire State Building, which was a fun experiment where you couldn't walk up, you know, there was no, they only did delivery to the Empire State Building. And but outside of that, and outside of everything I'm reading and learning, and we're talking at Brightloom, we're talking to a lot of virtual restaurant companies and other companies that are traditional restaurants that want to open up ghost kitchens. So I'm like you. I'm fascinated by it, and I'm learning. And from everything I'm hearing, it's coming fast. I think, especially when you think about like what Picnic is doing. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a national virtual pizza chain that's going to be powered by Picnic coming soon. That's going to be available only on all the third-party delivery platforms.
Anything to share?
Not yet. It is true that our technology really fits like a glove with a ghost kitchen for several reasons. One thing is because a ghost kitchen is really set up for efficiency, just to prepare meals and send them out on delivery or carry out. That's the way our system is set up. Also, I think Derek touched on the point that you have the problem of consistency of the dish. Can you get the kitchen to make the recipe according to the way it's made in your test kitchen? And our system will make exactly the recipe you want. Another advantage of automation is our system is making pizza. We can set it up to make 3 different brands of pizza. We can put different sauce, different crust, different toppings, and the same pizza line can make 3 different branded pizzas that will all be unique and different. And I think I read a few weeks ago or a few months ago, there was a delivery-only kitchen in New York that was delivering 3 different brands of pizza, but the only difference in the pizza was the box. So I think we could do better than that.
Huh, that's interesting. So then it just becomes a restaurant's job to brand and market itself to
Absolutely, exactly. So, you know, we're not in the restaurant business, and one reason is that running a restaurant is pretty different than running a tech company. Derek may disagree. You're doing both. But if you're in the restaurant business, you've got day-to-day quality control on meal quality, but you got to build a brand to attract people to your restaurant. And Ghost Kitchen, you've still got to get people to order there. But right now we have the delivery companies really competing to be the front end and be the marketing end and presenting brands to people on their phones to say, here's what you really want to eat. And no one really cares where that order goes or where the meal is prepared. They want it to be what they expect according to a recipe. They want it to be the same as last time. They want it to be hot and fresh. And Ghost Kitchen is ideally set up to do that.
Yeah, and I think it goes the other way too, because you know Uber Eats specifically does this a lot, and they love to talk about this. But they will pull data from a market, and they'll say like, oh, hey, restaurant that has a deep fryer, you know, there's no fried chicken concept within 20 miles of you. Why don't you open a ghost kitchen concept with fried chicken? Totally different name, totally different branding, totally different listing on the app, same kitchen.
Exactly, and you know this is similar dynamics to what we've seen in other industries where there's untapped efficiency gains to be had. And so as these underutilized assets get used more efficiently because you've got the data to know what to use and you know how to deploy it and you know how to meet the consumer taste more efficiently, the fitter players who are going to carry the day.
Let's talk about data, because I think it's very interesting. And I think, Adam, I'm sure that you have lots of thoughts to share on this, but one thing that makes restaurants nervous, I think, that I've heard, is working with third-party companies that then claim their customer data, or you know, kind of fighting over customer data, or who owns what data, and who gets to apply that to their business.
Yeah, I mean that. If you think about if I was a restaurant chain today confronted with all this change, the first thing I'd want to know is, you know, I'd want to really understand my customer. I'd want to understand how my customer is segmented. I'd want to understand the incrementality of different ordering channels. I would really want to know what's happening with if I'm on a third-party delivery platform, how profitable and incremental, and what kind of new business am I getting from that versus how cannibalistic is it? And all of those things are things that you need to have a data science or an analytics team and a capability to understand all that. And that's hard enough. And then if you don't have access to a bunch of individual data from orders that are coming from your restaurants because they were on a different platform, that makes it even harder. And so I just think that the sort of the battle for who owns the customer, who gets what customer data, I think that's happening right now. I'm hearing rumors that some of the third-party delivery companies are starting to share more and more data in certain cases because they're getting this pressure. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out. And coming from Starbucks, where we were just very, deliberate about paying attention to the customer data and using that customer data to provide a better customer experience in the form of personalized loyalty offers and recommendations and just a better ordering experience. I can say from firsthand experience, like having the data, being close to the customer relationship is really important.
Derek, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the battle is going on right now. I mean, every conversation around hooking up with one of these third parties is definitely about the sticking point. The big one is who gets the data, who gets to use it, when do they use it, what do they do with it?
Yeah, because it's like, there's a lot of great articles that are out there. The CEO of Thanks wrote an amazing white paper about the apocalypse of the four horsemen. I really also believe that what happened with Netflix and what happened with Amazon with their third-party resellers are other great examples of what's going to happen or what is happening to the restaurant industry. Particularly the Amazon example. I mean, it went from, it was very difficult to access a huge market as an individual person that wanted to sell on e-commerce to all of a sudden you had access to the world if you wanted it through Amazon. And I think that's true of restaurant companies, both traditional restaurant companies as well as virtual ones that are going to spring up. And
one thing we talked about when we had a call before this session was how quickly a concept can spin up in any given location. And as I said, it can be data-driven. But what does that kind of next level competition mean for existing businesses? Is it kind of like adapt and survive, or just what should legacy businesses be afraid of in a world where a pizza company can come into a market and suddenly just take over?
Like any major technological shift, I think every legacy brand should be concerned. It should be doing something about it, whether it's embracing it cautiously or aggressively, or if they're going to stick their head in the sand and avoid it in a way that makes sense for their brand and gives them still some level of defense. Fine dining 50 years from now, even with all this tech, I don't think it's going to look that much different than it does now. People are still going to go to a Thomas Keller restaurant to have it all handcrafted, but everyone else is going to have a very different dining experience over the years than that.
Yeah, I would say the operators that we're talking to, it's no one can escape the level of transformation that's happening in the industry. We've talked to food service executives who have left their companies because they can see how hard it is for those companies to adapt because they've got different clientele. The clientele are sort of oblivious to what's happening on the food service side. And so the transformation is happening, it's real. And so I think some of them are scared, some of them are adapting, some of them are folding. And that's been the restaurant business forever. Restaurants are historically pretty short-lived businesses unless they really have staying power. But it's just going to happen faster and faster. And like any industry, if you're being disrupted, you've got to change or you're going to go away.
Cool. I want to talk about the labor market and the changing labor market, especially in there's automation, right? And I don't know that I personally believe that the robots are coming for our jobs, but I think that's a concern that plays out in headlines. And I think I'm curious thoughts on the ethics of restaurant technology when you're talking about people's livelihoods and especially entry-level work.
Absolutely. yeah, we get the question. I think anybody who thinks about automation thinks, oh, that's going to take jobs. And I know I asked the question of people I know, like labor leaders who are friends of mine, hey, what do you think about this automation thing? And they're like, this is not new. This has been happening for decades. And so, labor really just wants access to the good jobs. In food service specifically, there is a huge labor crisis. National Restaurant Association says there's 800,000 open jobs in food service today, and that's going to be 1.6 million in 10 years because the young people and immigrants who have been the labor force traditionally in the entry-level jobs, they're not opting into that. They're not participating in those jobs as much. And the number of restaurant meals, as we've been discussing, is actually growing. So the gap is increasing, and every operator we're talking to, they have this problem. They can't keep people in the jobs. 150% average turnover, and when you have people, when you've hired someone, when you filled a job 3 times, you basically paid for one more person. So the jobs that are being taken are actually job openings, not actual jobs. We had a local news segment on our system last week, and we told them the story. And on the way back to the studio, they took pictures of all the help wanted signs in all the restaurants. It's just the workers just aren't there. So it's not really jobs. It's really helping the restaurant operators cope with the lack of labor availability.
Anyone else?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Yeah.
Adam, cosign.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't have anything specific to add other than it is a. I mean, right now it's a tight labor market in terms of it's hard to find good people anyways, given the state of the labor market. I think working in food service is harder than it's ever been, probably. I just think menus and operations and all these channels and everything else makes it harder and more stressful. Like Clayton was saying, it's like the expectations of throughput, the demand is there, but the margins aren't necessarily getting much better. So it's just a hard topic. I don't have anything to add, but it's a challenge. I do think that if automation is something of production, could actually maybe help make the job a little easier for those that are on the job. I think that's a good thing. And it may be quote unquote taking a job, but if it's helping a restaurant be more profitable, they can hire more people, they can invest in more restaurants and that. So ultimately it may reduce one job in one place, but create 3 jobs somewhere else. And it's not easy to say that to the one person that lost a job, but I don't think it's as simple as like you're replacing people. I think you're trying to help restaurants grow, and they ultimately are going to need people more than ever.
Yeah, every brand is going to have to make a decision. If they're able to liberate some amount of resource by automating, by implementing digital tools, whatever it is, how do they reapply that? And some are going to pocket it. That's their right. They made the investment. They did the work. But others are going to reinvest in their remaining people, or in their product, in their customer experience, in their facilities. And that could have significant positive implications for that brand that would allow them to open more stores, expand their menu, staff more hours, be more profitable, pay better, and be a net positive overall. You look at in the classic example is the ATM machine. When it was introduced in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of outrage that this is taking all the bank teller jobs. Well, and it did that, except there's more people working in banking now than there's ever been. So it was an overall positive for that industry to be able to move people from very mechanical, machine-oriented things to very people-oriented tasks where they could use their people skills more.
I would just add, there was a article in Inc. magazine this week after we made our launch pointing out that automation actually increases jobs because these are small businesses, and you're basically making these businesses more efficient. They have more margin, they're making a better product, and that actually enables them to lower prices, get more sales, perhaps open new locations. It's a healthy thing for the business, and something that's healthy for the business is generally going to be healthy for jobs.
Cool. I have one more question before I turn it over to audience Q&A, but I'm curious for each of you personally, what aspect of the dining experience do you not want technology to touch? And if you say none of it, I will not believe you.
At least for me at home, I'm not particularly tech savvy with the things we use at home. I still like the crafting something with my own hands, the knife work, doing things in the pan and seeing a recipe come to life. Even though we own some high-tech tools and we have a June oven, we mess around with the sous vide from time to time, and recipes sourced online always, and groceries delivered. But so the actual act of preparing and sitting down to a meal, manual
labor.
Yeah, I'd say, there's sometimes when I want a meal and I don't want to talk to anybody. Just, I'm happy to deal with an interface. But there's times when you want a nice level of service and be taken care of in a nice restaurant. So I think there's always going to be a role for service personnel to serve and create a dining experience. And even though there are legitimate automation offerings doing that, it's hard to see that completely replacing the service experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's even if I mobile order at Starbucks, I still love when I walk in and I know the barista that's there, and she says or he says a quick hello. So there's a moment of connection that happens even if you're taking something to go in a restaurant experience that I hope never goes away, no matter what the technology is. And I hope the technology makes it so that the people in the restaurants can pick their head up and connect, even if it's just for a second.
Great. Okay. So I can serve as mic runner if there are any audience questions.
Hi. Thank you very much. Adam, you mentioned the ownership of data, and I'm wondering if dark kitchens or ghost kitchens are that needful of that data behind the scenes. Are they just more interested in just production as opposed to running the front of the apps?
Well, it's a good question. It depends on whose dark kitchen it is. I actually think that what's really fascinating to me, and Kristen mentioned this, is that restaurant companies, whether they're virtual or traditional restaurant companies, if they know what people are ordering in a certain area, they can gear their dark kitchen to have those items that are going to be most in demand in that area. And they might even, if they're purely a virtual restaurant, they might even be able to use that data to be able to target customers on the delivery platforms, for example. So there's, from an operational perspective, data is still important in terms of like, how do you set up your kitchen? What items are you selling? But it's also very important if you're running a restaurant to know, how to use that data to engage your customers and to grow demand as well.
So in that context, is it your experience that the dark kitchens are just operations that have excess capacity that still run their own concept but still take that capacity to fulfill others? Well,
it's a great question. First of all, it's funny. I'm no expert on this dark kitchen topic. I'm still a student of it. But I've been talking to a number of restaurant operators, maybe 50 or 60 in the last few months, and it seems like right now there's this idea of that what is a dark kitchen or what is a ghost kitchen is actually a lot of different things. It can actually be a physically separate location, but it might actually be a separate room or separate area of your kitchen in an existing store. So there's almost like this dark kitchenization happening, whether it's literally a different kitchen or it's adding on and having a second make line or a separate area of your store. So it is about, to your point, it is to some extent about how do you make sure you create the right amount of throughput and capacity for each ordering channel, as opposed to having everything get jammed up into one make line with multiple ordering channels. So there's an element of creating additional capacity for these other ordering channels. It happens, but it doesn't have to just be in a dark kitchen. It can be a second make line, for example, or I was reading about how Dig In New York, they converted like their basement into a dark kitchen, but it was in the same location, which I thought was really smart. So I just think there's going to be more and more of ghost kitchenization or second make lines happening in restaurant chains. But Derek's more of an expert than I am. He actually runs ghost kitchens.
With all this customization typically in the restaurant space, location is king. Do you see some interesting mashups of brands, whether it be a Sweetgreen and a Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever the odd, arrangement may be, just because it makes a lot of sense from a space, optimization, ability to deliver? What are your thoughts on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we do, when we go looking for sites, look for other complementary brands where a lot of our customers are already going. You'll tend to find Sweetgreen next to SoulCycle pretty frequently, or other yoga studios or other health-oriented brands will set up near there, or they'll follow us into a location as well. You'll see a lot of that.
I mean, one of the things about ghost kitchens is that the end user doesn't really know, and as you said, probably doesn't care. It's a shared facility, and it could be anything. And because it's not open to the public, you would never know that your salad is being made next to your fried chicken, potentially.
But one thing that I'm hearing about is that, and you guys correct me if you've heard the same thing, is that for virtual restaurants or for ghost kitchens, there is this notion of having multiple cuisine types so that you can get efficiency on the delivery. So one household, if one person wants pizza and one person wants a burger, it's one delivery. That's actually can cut down and make the delivery logistic costs work. And so I do think that you're going to see more and more traditional restaurants team up on their ghost kitchens for that reason.
Yeah, let me actually rephrase a little bit. So I'm thinking more of like a food court with one central kitchen, right? And maybe there's 8 brand placards out there and restaurants going on one location, maybe double the size of footprint of a typical, quick serve restaurant. And do you guys see something like that happening?
Yeah, well, in Singapore, Deliveroo is experimenting with things. I've seen that where essentially Deliveroo will have and I'm sure there's others, I just know about the Deliveroo one because they're using Brightloom's product in this one location where it is basically a food court. And it's like 8 different restaurants, and you can order there, and they also are all on delivery platforms. So if you want to get on the Deliveroo platform and order from there, you can order from multiple restaurants, and it comes from essentially the same kitchen.
Had a quick question about the technology adoption phase. I mean, most restaurants today have adapted some form of technology. The complaint I hear a lot of times is the technologies don't work well with each other, though. The big problem with integration, and everyone's nodding their heads so that you're hearing the same thing. Where do you see that going? Are we going to just see more consolidation among the technology companies? Are we going to see an evolution where they work better with each other, particularly from the customer facing to the operation side? That's where I see the biggest pain point right now.
Yeah, I think as you move along the adoption curve of almost any new technology, once it starts to gain a little bit of traction, you get an explosion of both investment and offerings. I think that's where we're in right now. That's the state of the art now. Maybe we're just very on the beginning cusp of that. There's a lot of stuff out there right now. Some of it's really great. A lot of it's not. And there's inevitably going to be some consolidation.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing. You got companies now that are making middleware or meta software that integrates with lots of different point of sale systems. And I think the delivery platform, same thing, consolidation is going to happen. And it's getting easier and easier for these systems to integrate with each other.
Yeah, that's right. I think middleware is the key. I think everybody, all these different systems are all going to develop APIs, and they're just going to. It's going to get to the place where if you don't integrate well with other technologies, you're just not going to get used.
Hi, my name is Krishna. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, we all know that cloud kitchens are on the rise these days, mainly for the convenience factor. So do you think the convenience, they seek convenience because they don't want to cook, or it's problematic sourcing all the ingredients that they need, for all the dishes that they make throughout the week? They often miss some ingredients. So that's the first question. And if you think sourcing the ingredients is the problem, can you comment on why the meal kits business is not kicking off that well?
Well, the first one, I think all of those are factors that influence people's decision to order for delivery: convenience, access to ingredients, just the time to be able to get those ingredients. And for a few decades now, we've had multiple working parents and families, and classes like home ec aren't really there anymore. You've got an erosion of the basic skills to cook at home. I know a lot of my friends don't cook, Sometimes I feel like my family's sort of the standout, that my wife and I both do like to cook. I'm sorry, what was your second question? Oh, the meal kits. Why are meal kits not successful? Delivery and customer acquisition are both just really expensive, and they've struggled mightily with that.
This is a question for Derek and maybe for Adam, what you've seen at Starbucks, but we talk a lot about automation and jobs as if it's really far away, but you're doing this at Sweetgreen, and I'm curious to hear, have your store associates and store leads reported that they have more time to talk to consumers, or they're having a better store experience based on the delivery and the automation that you're doing, or is this demand still so high that it's not making a difference yet?
I think we're still at the beginning of this journey. We may not have realized a ton of shift there. Our team members also, like any, are challenged with the absorption of the technology and the change management effort of introducing it. Some things introduce a lot easier than others, and have had more positive feedback. We're learning along with all the other brands. Not everything that we try to roll out goes just so perfect.
On the Starbucks side, and I can't speak, I've heard they've actually, I haven't been at Starbucks for about a year and a half, so I don't have current information, but when I left, and I've heard they've actually been making a lot of great progress on providing tools to make it easier for their partners, their in-store partners. But I can tell you before I left, it wasn't getting much easier for the barista. But it's a really important point. I think this is probably true of Sweetgreen and others. It wasn't because the technology wasn't there to maybe make it a little easier. If a bunch of orders were being mobile ordered, that was one less step that the barista had to do to ring it up and mark a cup, for example, or ring it in. But what happened is Starbucks, like a lot of restaurants, was continually innovating its menu. And I think that was causing, so the demand on throughput in terms of the growing number of customers into the restaurant, combined with the complexity of the menu, combined then with also the complexity of order channels, it wasn't enough that the automation of the technology could make it easier. I still think it was getting harder. But I know that Starbucks has made great strides in that area lately. But I think so in other words, you have to think about menu complexity. I mean, if it's just burger, shakes, and fries, and you don't change the menu for 50 years, then I think tools can make it easier and easier on the employee. But if you're innovating your menu, it's harder to keep up with that.
Thank you. I think we're at time, but thank you all. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.